So what about Jesus and his life and death? You're God, you're sitting up in heaven, everything's great. Why would you be born in this troubled world? And then why, if you were born in this world, would you want to die? What do you gain by that? Why not just stay in the world and be powerful? What does it tell us about the nature of death? Well, one thing is that death is transformative. Paul says this in his first epistle to the Corinthians. He speaks of the resurrection of the dead and said, the body is sown in corruption, it's raised in incorruption. It's sown in dishonor, it's raised in glory. It's sown in weakness, it's raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. So Paul's saying that this time of death is a time of transition from weakness and so on into this greater power. And it was especially transformative for Jesus to go through this. You see this in the New Testament account because, first of all, he's just walking around, normal human being. He's teaching, he's healing, and so on, but he just occupies one physical space. After he's resurrected, though, oh, he's appearing behind locked doors. He's disappearing. He shows up with these people over here. Oh, now he shows up over there. And he's changed in some way. People don't recognize him and so on. He came down into this world to bring that divine power down to the outermost level. This is what Swedenborg says in his work on the Lord, which I recommend to you, section 36. While from the beginning God was human on the first or innermost level, he was not yet human on the last or outermost level. After he took on a human nature in the world, though, he also became human on the last or outermost level. The Lord united his human nature with his divine nature, and in this way made his human nature divine as well. So this was one reason why he wanted to come all the way down into this world of limitation and everything, what you see imaged here, but also bring with him that divine, which is represented on the other side there, so that by being at both levels, he could be present with all different states, all different conditions that we go through in between those two. This is why he said to John on the Isle of Patmos, when he was in his resurrected state, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. And at the beginning of the book of Revelation, he says, don't be afraid. I am the first and the last and the living one. I was dead, and see, I'm alive forever and ever. And I have the keys of death and of Hades, or hell. So the Lord was gaining this power over hell through going through this process. And part of what happened when he was going through this was that when he was in this outward state of being just in a worldly perspective, the divine seemed absent to him. He's praying to the divine. He's going through suffering. You can't get the divine itself to suffer. It just won't do it. And so he was going through this emptying out. Swedenborg says this about it. It was by means of his trials and the subsequent victories and by means of his suffering on the cross, which was the final trial, that he completely subdued the hells and completely glorified his human nature. So that's what he was doing here. And once the hells were dealt with, then the main thing was to fully glorify that human nature, which was making it one with what was divine. Here's further in the Lord, number 35. Because the Lord's human nature was glorified, that is, made divine, on the third day after his death, he rose again with his whole body, which is not true of any human being, since we rise again with our spirit only and not with our physical body. No one has ascended to heaven, we read in Scripture, except the one who came down from heaven. Every one of us who is saved ascends to heaven, though not on our own, but rather through the Lord's power. Only the Lord ascended on his own. So part of what the Lord was doing was not only going through this process of coming down, but then bringing that up and making himself available on all levels. But he actually became the process. And so when we go through the process of living in this world and dying, even if we don't know his name or who he is able to be intimately present with us and help us through every step of it. And this takes away the sting of death. Paul says again to the Corinthians, for this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible has put on incorruption, and this mortal has put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your sting? O Hades, where is your victory?